the cost of the prescriptions is more heavily covered by the carriers now.
Most people don't really use their benefits until they have a need to.
Everybody has to have silver sneakers, but only like 8% of our membership actually uses silver sneakers.
The prescriptions are the great separator right now when it comes to Medicare.
I think what we've lost sight of is why we have insurance, and it's for our medical benefits and our prescriptions.
The most expensive treatment is the treatment that waited too long. Welcome to this edition of the Medicare Made Simple podcast with Mediconnect. I'm Lance O'Brien, CEO, and today I'm joined by Ashley Mountain, Director of External Distribution with Highmark. What does that mean?
That means I oversee our external brokers that sell our plans, and I do so for our Medicare Advantage plans, our ACA plans, so the Obamacare, and also our DSNP plans.
Yeah, so you're basically all the individual health lines, essentially, if you will, and the people that are not internal to Highmark, because you do have an internal sales team, right?
Yes,
but you're overseeing everything that happens in the external force. And about how much of the business comes from that?
We get about 70% of our business from our external partners.
Yeah, which I don't think most people would realize that, because people that are listening today and in general, they're thinking, I'm just going to call the carrier is going to take care of everything. But there is a big reliance. And that's how we've built a great partnership over the years. And, excited to have you and get your expertise. Before we jump into today's big topic, which is going to be benefits utilization, I do want to let you know that you can find this on YouTube. Audio can be found on Spotify. We'll have micro segments of this on Facebook. But yeah, we're really excited to do this. We're going to talk a lot about benefits utilization, which is really important, right? Can really shift the way things do. But before we do that, I do want to talk about some breaking news. I feel like every time I turn around and I see a highlight on Medicare now, it's around Part D. And Part D is obviously prescription costs. Can you just talk prescriptions and their costs? Can you just talk a little bit about how the changes from the Inflation Reduction Act that was signed back in 21-22, how that's impacted the carrier?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely been the biggest impact over the last couple years. I think everyone remembers, hey, we're going to close the coverage gap. And that was great news. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean no one's paying for those prescriptions. That means that the cost of the prescriptions is more heavily covered by the carriers now. And so with the $2,000 out-of-pocket max from 2025, it's now a $2,100 max in 2026. Going to go up again a little bit next year as well. We see a lot more, benefit utilization, so prescription utilization. I think about specialty medications. Those are ones that are the very high cost. You're spending a percentage of the cost of the drug, and they can be $8,000, $10,000, $20,000 medications. Whereas people would think, I would never spend that much money on a medication. But now I have a $2,000 out-of-pocket max or $2,100. Hey, I can suddenly afford that.
Right.
But who has to pick up the rest of the amount? Exactly.
You do. So, and again, I think, one of the things we've seen as an external distribution, agency is we're basically seeing people say, well, why have there been changes to some of my medical copays? And why have there been changes to some of my extra benefits that I really, really like? And it's all tied back to what's happening in this prescription space. And as I say, the prescriptions are the great separator right now when it comes to Medicare, because that's where the most wide range of costs can happen.
Yes. You can have someone who's taken 2 or 3 generics and their medication costs are less than $100 a month. Or you have someone who's taken a couple brands and they're $12,000 out of pocket. So it can greatly impact the amount that the carrier is responsible for.
So external distribution director of that for Highmark, right? And this has kind of been your ride or die, right? This is not your first rodeo. Tell us a little bit about how you got with Highmark and how you flourished with them, essentially.
Yeah, so I've been at Highmark for over 17 years, which is, a long time for someone who started out of preschool, obviously.
Yeah. Nice one.
Yeah. So started basically right out of college. I went to college for health policy and administration, so I've always been interested in the business side of healthcare and started at the bottom, customer service. I always say that was the 3 years where I've learned the most and continue to use it in my career now. So learned all of the benefits, learned all of the copays, things like that, and what's most important to people. And then moved into the sales department about 13 years ago and have been working with the Medicare Advantage side the entire time. And recently added in the ACA and the DSNP and have made my way up to director over the last several years.
Well, congratulations to you. And, I know one of the things I do say a lot around here is if you start at the bottom and you know every job, it's easy to do your job, right?
Mhm.
And that's kind of how I start. I start as a salesperson and then as a manager and a trainer of agents. And I just think that it really, really helps. And again, in your role as director of external distribution, you're working a lot with agencies like Mediconnect, independent brokers, things of that nature. And one of the things that we're required to do when we go on a sales call, because again, we're going to start diving into the benefits utilization aspect of our conversation today, is every year Highmark puts out a book, as like most of the carriers do, with the different plan offerings. And
Yes.
in that is a summary of benefits.
Mhm.
Talk to us about that and why that's important in the sales process, if you will.
So summary of benefits is just going to have a pretty extensive list of all of the things that are available to you as a customer. So it's going to have your medical benefits, things like your copays, how much you're paying for your premiums, what is it going to cost if you have a PT visit, and then other things like supplemental benefits. So I know people like to look at how much dental am I going to get, or what other benefits am I going to get in addition to my medical services that are going to be available. And they're usually pretty easy to read side by side comparison. So if you're thinking there's two plans that are available that I think might be a good fit for me, put them up against each other and take a look at the differences in what you're going to pay for those services that you will most likely utilize.
Yeah, and I know for us, like we're required to go over that summary of benefits when we're meeting with someone, whether it's in person or over the phone. One of the things that always strikes me is very, very odd's probably not the best word, but like if you go in and you ask somebody, like, what's your specialist copay? I don't know, right? Like really getting them to understand that. And then they get this huge book in the mail. I don't know if they're still doing the books or if it's PDF now. You still do the books
Yeah.
called The Evidence of Coverage. Talk to us a
Yes.
little bit about that. Like, why the two different documents?
Yeah. So the summary benefits is really a pre enrollment summary of what you're going to see. When you get that evidence of coverage, it's after you've become a member. It has everything down to what exactly is included in this benefit. So when you think about an inpatient hospital stay, your summary benefits will just say inpatient hospital and here's your copay. But when you get that evidence of coverage, it will say things like your room and board. It will say things like blood transfusions if you need those, if you need any surgeries. All of that is going to be listed out in there, what is included in each specific benefit and what you're responsible for paying.
So it's essentially a deeper dive,
Yes.
if you will, on the summary of benefits. Now, again, from my perspective, the reason that you guys do this is you want people to know what their benefits are,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
And why is it so important for them to, and now we'll marry today's topic, right? Like, why is it so important for them to understand their benefits so they can utilize their benefits?
Yeah. So I mean, you don't want anyone to have any surprises. So if they're going into a hospital, they have to have surgery. We want them to understand exactly what is included in that. If they say, "Hey, do you want a private room versus a shared room?" A lot of the times, if they have both, only one is really covered. You'd have to pay the extra for um, a separate room.
Right.
So certain things like that are going to be outlined in there, and just making sure that there's no surprises when they have services.
Yeah, because I think when somebody's under the stress of a medical emergency,
Mhm.
they don't want the stress of the financial aspect or
Exactly.
how it's covered to also impact them.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit now so we kind of understand in the sales process, they get a review of the benefits. Then in the mail, generally, although they can get it via email,
Mhm.
they get an evidence of coverage. That's a deeper dive. But most people don't really use their benefits until they have a need to. So let's talk about the importance of benefits utilization. What does that mean? And let's start at the ground floor. What's the important aspects of that when it comes to Highmark or a carrier's perspective?
Yeah. So when you think about like things that are other things are listed in the evidence of coverage, it's going to have things like a preventative schedule.
Yeah.
So, what services can you get that are generally at no cost? Things like cancer screenings, diabetic testing, things like that that may be available to them to make sure that we are catching any of those diseases in advance before they become more of a either medical emergency or very high cost medical issue that is more complicated to cure.
Yeah, because again, ultimately, the most expensive treatment is the treatment that waited too long.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because now it's elevated in risk, most likely elevated in urgency, So really what Highmark and what a carrier is looking for is for someone to do their annual wellness checkup,
Yes.
right? Go and get their mammogram or their colonoscopy, right? And you guys, I'm not sure if we can talk about this or not, but we probably can. You even incentivize them, right, for those types of things because it's so important to the health outcomes, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do provide those incentives, and we continue to follow up with them and make sure that they are aware that they're due for certain screenings so that they can get those on time.
Yeah, so we've covered the sales aspect of how at the very beginning the agent's trying to get the benefits into their lap. Highmark is, once they sign up for the plan, is trying to get an expanded view of the benefits in their lap so that they utilize it. So in the next segment, I kind of want to just dive down a little bit deeper into what does a good member look like, that it's a win-win for them and for the carrier for Highmark. Some people listening may not realize you guys are not just in Western PA, right? Like, what's your footprint?
So we are throughout all of Pennsylvania, Delaware, New York. Two parts of New York. So we have in the capital region, northeastern New York, and
where I'm from.
Yes, and then the Buffalo market, which is western New York, and also West Virginia. And you may have heard we are in the process of affiliating with Kansas City Blue. So we're going to have a footprint out in the Midwest here soon.
I actually read an article on that today or an email. So, it was
just got the approval.
Yeah,
I think yesterday.
Pretty amazing. Guys excited about that, I assume. So are you going to be doing Advantage plans out there?
They do not have Advantage plans right now. They currently are offering ACA and Medigap. They stopped Medicare Advantage plans a couple years ago, but I think with this affiliation, we'll be looking forward to it in maybe a few years, bringing the Medicare Advantage back to that market.
Awesome. I mean, I think I'm always of the viewpoint, because there's some people out there that you should only do a supplement. Advantage plans are bad. There's some people that think the other way, right? Like, Advantage plans are the way to go. And I think it's just really important for the individual member to understand what their options are so they can make the best decision for themselves.
And have choices.
Yeah, because you don't want to be pigeonholed. Because again, like, one of my big arguments is there are literally people that are living on $1,400 a month in their income, and they can't afford to put $400 of that into their insurance premiums. Right. So for that individual, even though if they have more money, maybe the Medicare Advantage plan wouldn't be their first choice, but it's still much, 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 I'll add one more much, better than having original Medicare on its own.
Absolutely.
Because there's just significant risk there. So we've been talking about the summary of benefits. We went over evidence of coverage from the carrier perspective, the importance of benefits utilization. So what does an ideal member look like for Highmark?
That's a great question. I think most people would expect us to say someone who's not utilizing benefits at all, because
because then there's nothing to deal with, right?
They're not costing us any money.
Yeah.
But eventually that person is going to need services. And so for us, the ideal member is someone who's going and getting their annual wellness visit. They're getting their preventive care on time.
Yeah.
They are, if let's say they're diabetic, they're going to their endocrinologist several times a year. They're testing their blood sugars. And medication is another one where we say, hey, that's a huge cost. But at the same time, a lot of those preventive medications that are out now are generics. They're very inexpensive. And as long as those members are taking those medications as they should, that's keeping them healthy. And those are the kind of members that are ideal for us.
Yeah, because again, to your point, you want to make sure that they're getting the care they need, that if they're prescribed something, they can get it at an affordable cost if possible, right? And then they're using it to keep themselves healthy. If they're not using it, then that's usually when things go haywire. You know, like I just finished cardio rehab because of what happened with myself. And every single day that I went into my rehab, the first question they asked me was, did you take all your medications this morning? Right now, again, there was purposes for that, but the rehab, but it is really important in how the health plan is able to manage outcomes for the member.
Right.
Yeah. So being on the sales side, and having sat across the table from a lot of people over the years, you know, it's like, oh, do you guys have that silver sneakers? Or, you know, what's the dental benefit? And there seems to be, and it's different for everyone, but there seems to be one or two benefits for the people that are just like, I gotta have this. What are the benefits, one, that most people overlook that are really important? And then the ones they make a big deal out of that they never flip and use, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the last couple of years, we've definitely seen a shift in what is quote unquote important to people. And it's all those extra benefits, things like their over the counter benefit. They are silver sneakers is one where everybody has to have silver sneakers, but only like 8% of our membership actually uses silver
So
sneakers.
let's just say that again. So if there's 100 people, how many actually use the benefit?
Probably around 8 to 10.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's very minimal. But I think it's a status thing. People think, hey, I'd have to have the option to do that.
And going back to, sorry to cut you off, but going back to our previous conversation, Highmark would actually probably like, and the insurance carriers in general would like that number to be more like 70 or 80%, right?
Yeah.
Because they're working out, they're exercising, they're doing things that are going to promote good health.
Right. And so those are the reasons we provide those benefits is, again, it's the option. There is no restriction there to say, hey, well, I can't afford a gym membership. You can get one at no cost with your Highmark plan. But again, the utilization is very low on those. The dental benefits have become extremely important. And I know that's probably one where you can have some high cost things that come in that having a dental benefit is going to be very helpful. But I think what we've lost sight of is why we have insurance, and it's for our medical benefits and our prescriptions. Those are the two most important things that can get you, you know, if you don't have good coverage, can cause you to go into debt or have copays that are not affordable. So looking at those benefits, like if you know you're going to have a knee replacement next year, you have to look at that PT benefit.
Right.
Because you're going at least 3 times a week for probably 6 to 8 to 10 weeks. And those copays add up very quickly.
Yeah.
So looking at the benefits that could, while the dollar amount may be only $30, what is that 30 times 12 looking like in the future? So looking at those medical benefits and really thinking, what am I going to utilize next year? And what could be my maximum out of pocket based on what the plan offers.
Yeah, I'm laughing a little bit because, you know, I'm thinking about the member who, you know, wants their $80 a quarter of over the counter so they can have a whole stockpile of Band-Aids in their bathroom. But yet then when they have to go and pay for the PT, they may cut their session short or whatever because they can't afford it. And so when you guys are laying out plans, you're trying to think holistically about the member. But when they don't utilize certain benefits, that money could really go somewhere else, right?
Yes.
Like if they're not over here saying, oh, we want this, we want this, we want this, Highmark or the other carriers, right, might put that money elsewhere. Like, how does that's got to be a tug of war for you guys.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to zig when they're zagging.
Yes. So coming from the traditional sales background, it's interesting to work very closely with our product team when they're creating the benefits because there's a certain parameters you have to be within, and you add something here, but you have to take something away in another area. So it's what is that sort of niche area where the medical benefits are very strong, they're attractive to people, but also providing some of those additional items. And, you know, the OTC is one that I think all of us laugh a little bit about because 3 years ago, it was, you know, people were offering $250, $300 a quarter just for OTC, but how many tubes of toothpaste do you still have from 2023 now?
Yeah,
So,
OTC was all the rage, right?
Yes.
You know, and it kind of ran its course. I think there's a value to it, right? Because if you can't afford vitamins and you can get that through the OTC, like I understand the concept behind it, but at what cost or at what percentage does it really make sense?
Yeah. So it's like is $50 a quarter sufficient? Probably more so realistically than the $200 we were seeing recently. So it seems like a lot of carriers are pulling back on that benefit. And again, it's not, you have utilizers of the benefit who will utilize it every quarter religiously, but then you also have a good significant portion that will say, well, I use it one quarter and then I forget the next quarter, and maybe I do a partial order the
Yeah.
third, and then the fourth quarter they forget about it. So it's not something that is, again, keeping people alive. In most cases, it's just a nice to have.
Yeah. And again, I think a lot of it does have to do with the financial resources of,
Mhm.
the retired individual that may be on a fixed income. So, um, when it comes to benefits utilization, we've been really trying to talk about it in a very positive light because, again, to one of your first statements, we do want people to utilize their benefits the right way. But when can utilization be bad for the member and the health plan?
So I think it's a situation where they have come into, an illness that could have been prevented.
Mm.
You know, vaccines, we have, the shingles vaccines one where, hey, you could have avoided having shingles. And that's not necessarily a super high cost thing to treat, but it's preventable.
Right.
But other things, like if you're getting your cancer screenings in advance, it's saving not only the carrier, but the member a lot of money in the future. Radiation or any sort of surgery to, cure or at least help the cancer is way more expensive than a simple screening and, maybe a very quick catch of an issue and an easy treatment plan from there. So it's not only financially beneficial, but I think emotionally and physically and socially, all of those things beneficial for the members to, keep up on their preventive care, making sure that they are utilizing. I mean, that benefit is there in general as no cost. And so there shouldn't be any reason why they're not getting their screenings and taking their, you know, all of the screenings and things that they need to do in advance.
Yeah, and I look at my own situation. Obviously, I'm not 65 yet, right? I do have a big birthday coming up this year, just like you do, right?
Yes.
But I won't rat you out. But I don't have silver sneakers, but I was going to the gym, right? So pass out at the gym, right? Red flag. If I wasn't going to the gym,
Right.
I think it would have been a totally different story,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, so going to the gym and trying to be healthy created a red flag. I mean, I ended up having, pretty big blockage in my right artery, but I never had a heart attack,
Yeah.
right? Like using my benefits and trying to stay healthy actually had a positive outcome for me. And I have Highmark ACA insurance,
Yeah.
right? Which is really good in the area that I live in, right? Down in the Canonsburg area, Together Blue just really works with the Canonsburg Hospital, all those things for me. So, but like it was very affordable to me out of my own pocket, like, for the emergency room time I spent there, the catheterization, the other stuff I did, like I didn't have, my bills weren't over $1,000.
And a lot of yours wasn't emergency at that point. It
No.
wasn't, you were already having a heart attack and now we've got to get in and do a cath immediately. It's
Yeah, that would have changed everything,
yes.
right? So, like, the preventative is so important. So, as we kind of wrap up the thoughts, anything else that you think it's really important for the listeners? Because we do have people that are on Medicare, they're on Advantage plans, and they're probably not thinking about, oh, yeah, this is why it's important for me to do this. Any other parting thoughts, if you will, on benefits utilization?
I would just say the evidence of coverage it's an extensive book, but it's very helpful in understanding exactly what is available to you. And never let, we don't ever want the copays or costs or the fear of those things to prevent someone from receiving treatment. So knowing exactly what to expect if you're going into the emergency room, all of that's going to be laid out there. And that's going to give you the peace of mind, or the members the peace of mind to say, okay, I can do this. I can afford, if it's $125 to walk into the emergency room, I'm going to do that versus waiting until something
I
drastic
might not be
happens.
able to walk into the
Right.
emergency room.
You have to call the ambulance and then it becomes much more extensive. So it's just understanding how your benefits work and making sure you're being as proactive as possible.
And that's one of the things, and I actually didn't plan on saying this, but it's one of the things I do love about our client experience department, right? Because when we have someone that goes through the sales process with us, they sign up for a plan, then they're outreached to by our client experience team who is saying, hey, would you like us to review your benefits with you again, right? Is there anything that you're not sure of? Do you have a question that you like? All of that is super important. It's everybody's like, oh, December 7th, December 7th, December 7th, I have to sign up for a plan. But actually understanding and utilizing that plan is probably even more important.
Yeah. That's what I love about our relationship too, is I love the model that you guys have with the client service team. And there's always an open door. So if you have questions and the members say, hey, is this something that I have access to? And your team doesn't know the answer, you guys just reach out to us and we will figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, before we even started this podcast today, there was a question I had for you about a benefit situation because I don't live in that world anymore. But yeah, having this relationship and having the connection, not only to the carrier, but to the client makes for a better result all around for everybody.
Yeah. And it helps us understand the clients a little more too from your perspective.
Yeah, because you're always asking us, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? Right. Yeah, no, so it makes sense. So Ashley, I really appreciate your time today, your insight. I do think this is an important topic because people are always worried about their insurance going up. And I think one of the things that would stem some of those fears and some of that reality is utilizing their benefits the correct way.
Yes.
So we love hearing from our clients. They say bad news travels fast. Well, we love good news, right? So I just want to share one of the Google reviews that we got from this past enrollment period. The client said, finally, after trying to get information for 2026 Medicare, which just was a crazy year.
Yes, it was. Crazy and busy.
Yes, it was insane. From numerous companies, phone calls, I reached Mediconnect. The best experience I ever had was dealing with Mediconnect, which I love that, personally, like it means we're doing something really well. So one phone call, all my questions made the entire process seamless, so simple to understand, choosing the right program for my needs by using the provided response and suggestions. 2026 will be a better health year using my new Medicare plan. So like that's someone's words to us as an outsider who does work with us, who wasn't paid to come in today. Right. What's your reaction to that? And you kind of see that from our relationship, right?
Yeah. So I love to hear those kinds of things. I know we work very closely with Mediconnect, but as we talked about, my role is overseeing brokers across our entire service area. So it was a very busy year for a lot of carriers, made a lot of changes, and their phone lines were busy. I know ours were extremely busy this year. So having the opportunity to have a company that we work with so closely like Mediconnect makes it so much easier for those people to call somewhere else and say, hey, I had some changes to my plan this year. I want to look at all of the options. And that's not something that carriers themselves can do. They can only talk about their own plans. So
Right.
Our brokers and our partners like Mediconnect provide that opportunity for clients to look at all of their benefits and determine what's going to be the best fit for them. And that's what we're talking about today is what benefits do you need and how is it going to be the most cost efficient for you?
Yeah, because again, for the people listening today, they might have the perception that, well, the insurance companies just want more and more members because they would make more and more money that way. Doesn't work that way, does it?
No, it does
You need
not.
the right member based on the benefits and the prescriptions, correct?
Yes, yeah. So sometimes we know that some of the plans that we offer may not be the best fit for someone. If someone is has a medication that we have as a tier 4 on our formulary, it's a tier 2 with another carrier, chances are they're going to be a better fit for them. And we understand that and want them to make that decision that's best for them.
Yeah, and that's why I really do love this review because our goal, she said 2026 will be a better health year using my new Medicare plan. Our goal is never to switch people for the purpose of switching them. Right. I like to keep people in the same plan if I can.
Yeah.
But if there's a better option for them, I know it's not just better for them. I know it's better for the Medicare industry in general because they're not going to be spending money at this carrier that actually could impact costs and all of that stuff. Getting the right plan for you, I still think is so incredibly important in this process.
Yeah. I think just being open to looking at all of the options and saying, hey, I've been with this carrier for 20 years.
I've been with Highmark since the 1950s.
Yes. But sometimes you just have to be open to looking and deciding what is best, knowing all of the options. And maybe that does end up being Highmark still, but sometimes, it also ends up being another competitor.
Yeah, and that's really why we exist, as you kind of referred to, is we want to be able to look at all the options for an individual in a given benefit year. The good thing about Medicare is, they do have the opportunity to review that yearly. So important. So again, appreciate your feedback to us. We're looking forward to doing a lot more business with Highmark and getting the people of Pittsburgh and the surrounding footprints in the right plan, whether it's Highmark or not.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Lance.
Yep.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Medicare Made Simple podcast with Mediconnect, and I'm Lance O'Brien. If you're looking for more content, want to get more education, you can go to our socials, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You'll be able to find a lot of information there. You can also go to our website, mediconnectinsurance.com. We have blogs, other information that you can receive there. If you just have questions, you can give us a call at 888-818-6334. We're committed to getting great information to you in simple forms. So reach out on this channel for more content as it's delivered.